discover her world. Okay. What does she like? What kind of music does she like? What kind of sport does she like? What kind of books does she like? What kind of animals does she like? What kind of games does she like to play? Enter into it. I remember when I was about 6 and growing up in rural Western Canada, I had this idea that maybe it would be great to be an Indian princess. And so my dad made me a bow and arrow and a quiver to keep my arrows in, a birch bark quiver. It was great. And then the next year when I was about 7, I thought that I was an artist. So my dad made me an easel. And I remember when I was about 10 and I was very sick, and I really wanted to do things in bed, but it was a bit hopeless because the covers are everywhere. And so he got this big piece of plywood and he cut it out for me. And he cut it just to suit my body so that I could pull it right up against me with the pillows behind me and I could sit up in bed and do things. And I felt very regarded and loved. You know, he noticed what I needed and kind of came to the party. And it was a real gift to me. So you might not be a maker, right? So maybe you don't make things, but if it's music, you can be a listener. Do you know the kind of music your daughter likes? It's probably, you know, could be the Wiggles or whatever. But, you know, it's okay. Enter into it. It'll soon be something else, and it'll probably be interesting. If it's sport, you know, you can be a watcher. It matters if you watch. It really matters if you come. And you might be able to be a coach. You might be able to be a helper. Okay. If it's animals, you know, what can you learn? What can you learn about those animals? Try to like them. You know, try to find out about them. And even if it's clothes or fashion or color or movies or TV programs, you know, these are ways in which you enter into her world, and then you have something to talk about and something to share. And then I guess the other thing I would say too is probably doesn't need to be said, but don't belittle her interests, even if she supports the Eagles. Right? So don't belittle her interests, because she's working her way through them. They're her interests now, and they won't be her interests next year or in 10 years' time, but you never know, they may be. And then the other thing I'd say about discovering worlds is introduce her to your world, if you can. Give her a chance to discover what you like. You know, take her fishing if you like it. Now, she might hate it, but she might love it, right? Teach her about cricket. I remember one of our daughters, we were on a camp once, and she got the paper, and she turned straight to the sports page, and she was poring over the back of the sports page, and one of the guys that was there said, "Can I marry you?" Because she has a dad who loves sport and has included her in that, right? And she loves it too. And she has to phone from Sydney and have long and involved conversations about what's going to happen when Adelaide meets Port, and you know which full forward is going to be able to do it. And she really doesn't like it if she doesn't have enough contact with her dad on that issue, because I can't talk about that properly. Only her dad can. So yeah, think about letting her in. Speak your native tongue to her, whatever your native tongue is. Talk to her about your art. I remember going away with a family once, and this is before we had any children, and this was in Canada, and we were skiing, and it was actually an Australian family, and these people were, the father in particular was a very well-known sports person in West Australia. He's a very good sport. And his son also was a very good sport. And his wife was pretty interested in skiing, so we were all skiing. His daughter was not interested in skiing. She didn't like skiing, she wasn't a good skier, she really was not interested in sport. And throughout that ski trip, she got more and more and more disenfranchised. And I remember thinking, how difficult is it going to be a daughter in this family, right? If you're not a sports person. So while your own interests are, important, if they overshadow who she is as a person, then they maybe need to be modified a bit. Because she needs to be validated for who she is. And if she's not a skier, what does it matter, right? In the scheme of things, what matters is how she feels about herself. Okay, so those are some practical ways to offer your daughter your regard. in a sense, to offer her who you really are. And to take time, really, to tell her that she counts. And I guess the last thing I'd say is, who needs this? Who needs this stuff that we've been talking about? And somebody said at the beginning that, hey, isn't this the same basically for our sons and daughters? And maybe it is kind of the same. But what I'd say to you is, the kid who really needs this the most is the kid for whom you have the least natural affinity. So if you think about your kids, there may be one that you link to more easily than another. And if you're a man, it could be your son. It might not be. It might be one of your sons. It may be your daughter. I don't know who it is. But you know, when you think about yourself, when you think about your family, there's one that the connection is easy for maybe. And maybe one that the connection is not so easy for. So who needs this the most?
One who it's not.
The one who it's not easiest for, because chances are you do this sort of stuff naturally with the one that you have the best affinity to. But the one that you don't link to as easily, you may need to think, now what do I need here? How do I actually affirm that person?